What's going on, guys? My name is Steve. Thank you for stopping by my channel. I'm just an American guy on a journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Today, we're going to be reacting to the history of Ireland summarized. I've been trying to figure out what directions I should take when it comes to trying to discover more about Ireland. But thus far, I've received limited recommendations when it comes to things to check out in Ireland. So if you have any ideas of different things that's kind of exclusive to Ireland that I should check out, please feel free to leave them in the comments section, and hopefully I can come by and find them and bookmark them and whatnot and check them out later. But yeah, guys, I know I can check out things like a couple of the sports that are unique to Ireland, different areas like Dublin and whatnot, or some of the beauty of Ireland, because I know there's a lot of that there, a lot of beautiful places, and obviously things like the history. I've sort of touched on the language a little bit. I might see if there's something to do with accents, but, I'm kind of not sure what directions to take, So yeah, if you have ideas, please feel free to share them in the comments section so that I can kind of know where to go with this journey when it comes to kind of learning about Ireland more. But anyways, guys, enough of that. I checked out a video about why Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland are kind of split. And that was pretty cool. It kind of helped me understand a little bit more about Ireland, and I've learned a little bit more through discovering kind of the Celtic traditions of Halloween and things like that. But as a whole, I know the basics of what's happened in Irish history, but I don't know really the whole gist of it, if you know what I mean. I need to check out things like the Troubles and stuff, and I do plan on doing that soon. I want to go more in depth on the potato famine. I learned a brief history about that, but I've been told I found a little video series that seems to go more in depth on that, so I'm looking forward to checking that out. But other than these few things, I feel like, something like History Summarized of Ireland will be a good next step to check out. So anyways, guys, enough of my rambling. Let's go ahead and check out the history of Ireland.
On the surface, the history of Ireland seems like the tale of one island getting beat up for over 1,000 years straight. And, well, that's not incorrect, I'll be honest with you. But from another perspective, it's a story of a unique civilization rising from the intersection of two very different worlds.
Oh my goodness, look at that. I love that look, man. It's so beautiful. The stonework is just amazing.
Remarkably enduring through centuries of subjugation and hardship. When it's all too common to see entire cultures wiped from existence because of colonial oppression, Ireland is a very hard-fought counterexample. To see what makes Ireland's history so special and to learn how Irish cultures survived to the present day, let's do some history. This video is brought to you by Audible. More on that later. Our story begins with the migration of the Celts from Central Europe sometime in the 5th to 3rd-ish centuries BC. Okay, look, it's an ancient migration, alright? Dates are gonna be finicky on this one. And they settled on this little island here, which they named Eire after the goddess Eru, which I maybe said right? I don't know. I'm just gonna try and say as few Irish names as possible so I don't embarrass myself, which is where we get the name Ireland. And speaking of language, they spoke an early version of Irish, which is a subset of the Gaelic language family, which is a subset of the Celtic language family. Not confusing at all. Though Ireland didn't have a written literary tradition, the culture venerated storytelling bards, as well as druids, who are priest-like figures that doubled as historians, judges, and even doctors. Another popular profession in Ireland was, surprisingly enough, king, because there was no overarching central authority, so Ireland usually had somewhere around 150 local tuatha that each had their own king. Wow. And there were no cities at this point either, so people just clustered into groups on available farmland and got to it. Though
I heard that, you can kind of, like, basically almost every popular last name had a king, it seems. And it seems like they were, each king had a county. I don't know if that's accurate, but that looking at the map of the different names and what were different kingdoms, I believe it seems like they were each like a unique county. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Ireland wasn't politically unified, they shared many elements of art and religion, from Celtic knots to Cuchulainn. Irish mythology is rad, and you can see some examples here, but there are also all manner of gods, heroes, and some pretty bonkers magic too. Sadly, we don't have as much information on them as we might like because the Irish mythological cycle wasn't codified until centuries later, and parts of it have since been lost. Plus, the stories themselves sometimes conflict with one another on account of how regional these oral traditions were. Though we today only know so much about early Celtic Ireland, the picture gets clearer and the culture gets richer with Ireland's second big arrival, Christianity. Ireland actually got the good end of the deal on this one because their conversion was peaceful and it didn't involve them getting invaded by Rome. Win-win, and quite the opposite in fact, as
really?
Irish pirates
Okay.
often found their way to the western coast of Rome and Britain. In one instance, a captured young Roman lived in Ireland for 6 years before escaping back to Britain, and after some soul-searching he trained in France to become a priest and set back out to Ireland in the hopes of converting the people to Christianity. Though he wasn't the first missionary to Ireland, this Saint Patrick, as you've probably guessed, was certainly the most consequential. The dates for his life and career are all over the place, and there's even a theory that Saint Patrick is actually an amalgamation of two different characters, but this show is history summarized, and I am super not qualified to settle very much ongoing debates in the academic historical community. But what we can say for certain is that he never drove the snakes out of Ireland, because Ireland never had snakes. That's just a very polite code word for pagans, and even that isn't fully accurate. Patrick, buddy, you're killing me here. Because Celtic culture didn't just go away. It's a classic example of syncretism, where the goal is to make two disparate cultures coexist rather than have one completely supplant the other. Latin was introduced, but it was spoken right alongside Irish Gaelic. Monasteries were built all around the islands, but they were...
What are these crosses called right here? I recognize them. And is this the circle meant to be the sun? What is the meaning behind this and what's it called?
Regionally autonomous. Jesus was the new number one, but the old Irish mythology remained firmly in the popular conscience. Best of both worlds. And the timing of all this couldn't have been better, because while mainland Europe was splintering out into dozens of Gothic kingdoms in the wake of the Western Roman Empire's collapse, Ireland just got a jolt of new culture to play with and about 400 years of complete peace to refine it. The strongest literary tradition in Europe was made in Irish monasteries, often called scriptoria, where accounts of old Irish mythology were written alongside beautifully decorated manuscripts of the Bible. All around, Ireland was known as the Isle of Saints and Scholars, and it's because of their hard work that so much ancient Latin work survives today. Irish missionaries to Europe even laid the groundwork for Charlemagne's 9th century Renaissance in France. It's also during this golden age that we see and hear two core symbols of Irish culture, the Celtic cross and the harp. The cross appears in stone all over Ireland, and it's a perfect visual metaphor for how Celtic Irish culture is literally woven into Irish Christianity. Again, all this while the rest of Europe was having some serious, let's call it growing pains. Although Ireland was decentralized in both government and religion, it enjoyed over 4 centuries of peace between the numerous Tuatha and no threat of invasion. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and all shiny things must get raided by Vikings. And speaking of Vikings, Though Ireland didn't quite get hit as bad as the English and Scots one island over, Ireland saw its fair share of coastal looting and burning. Monasteries were an easy target because of their abundance of treasures like gemstone-covered manuscripts and their non-abundance of defensive fortifications.
Beautiful.
The Vikings did, however, contribute Ireland's first cities of Dublin, Cork, Waterford, and others settled along the island's coasts. And as the Vikings got comfortable in their cities and chilled out enough to stop with the damn raiding all the time, their cities became hubs for trade and production. Ultimately, though, Ireland's much bigger problem for the next 1,000 years would come from right across the channel. And oh golly gosh, would you look at the clock, it's time to complain about England. Woo! Sorry, professionalism. So while Ireland was having a good time minding its own business and not bothering anyone else, the Anglo-Normans came over to establish the Lordship of Ireland, which sounds a lot more, complete than it actually was. England held on to the urban population centers in the east, but because of stuff like wars and plague, it was pretty patchy for the next 5 centuries. But in 1509, Henry VIII became king and decided that he wanted to be a really big deal, so it's here that things start getting rough. See, Henry converted to Protestantism after he got tired of killing his wives and wanted to just divorce them instead, but Ireland remained firmly Catholic. This displeased Henry, so he made a new push to colonize Ireland, and England made steady progress in beating up on the Irish, taking more and more of their land, and busting down their monasteries and churches. Unsurprisingly, the Irish rebelled. Several times. In the decade after the union of the English and Scottish crowns in 1603, King James confiscated Irish land in the northern region of Ulster to make way for Scottish colonists to start private plantations. And this marks the start of a couple unfortunate defining trends for the next 3 centuries. First is the treatment of Ireland as a subservient colony and the steady seizure of Irish land, and also the persecution of Catholicism through strict social laws. In the 17th and 18th centuries, Irish Irish farmers became tenants in their own island, and this process only accelerated with the advent of anti-royalist and Civil War extraordinaire Oliver Cromwell, who murdered his way across Ireland during his War of the
Green is majority Catholic. Okay, this is 1688, I guess. So it's majority Catholic, whereas middle 50%. I don't know what that means. That kind of, what does that mean? Because then orange is Protestant, green is Catholic, gray is middle 50%. Does that mean they're just a mix of Catholic and Protestant?
Three Kingdoms. More land was confiscated, Catholic Irish were forcibly evicted and also banned from certain jobs, and for the next 300 years, Ireland was...
Whoa! Wow! Wow, what happened to the Catholics? They were banned. Where did they go? Just like they hid their faith, or like what? I don't understand. Like they just disappeared? Because I know now the entire Republic of Ireland is majority Catholic, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I don't. That's interesting. I don't know what he's getting at there.
Regarded as little more than a conquered colony. Although the anti-Catholic laws were largely repealed by the turn of the 19th century, Ireland was still poorer going into the 1800s than it had arguably ever been, as its production and wealth were systematically siphoned off to Britain. Only the majority British pockets of the island in Dublin and Ulster saw much improvement, and it was these Ulster Irish who spoke for Ireland in the new United Kingdom's Parliament. If this all sounds short-sighted, exploitative, and extremely fragile, you'd be correct. But wait! It only gets worse. See, Ireland's agriculture was, well, dangerously precarious. Most of their food production was beef exports to Britain, and that didn't leave a whole lot of available farmland on Ireland for feeding the Irish, so the tenant farmers turned to potatoes, which had by far the most nutritional value for the space they took to grow. Not super great that the systematic exploitation of their land forced Catholic Irish to subsist entirely on a single food staple for generations, but at least they're not starving. So anyway, in 1846, the potato blight hit Ireland and all of the crops failed, so people started starving.
Oh.
Cool. The thing is, potato crops were going rotten all across America and Europe. Ireland was just the only place where potatoes were the only option. But with the crisis at hand, Parliament acted swiftly to provide rations and relief to... No, I'm just kidding. Parliamentarians in London insisted that the reports of famine were completely overblown and refused to divert resources for aid. Help did slowly arrive, but it was predicated on putting Ireland through economic reforms to modernize their infrastructure. Yeah, because that's exactly what Ireland was asking for. Not food. God, no. Laissez-faire mercantilism. Way to read the room, guys. Eventually, the blight passed and things slowly returned to normal, but not...
South and West, especially, yeah, I'd heard that.
Before 1 in 7 people died of starvation and 1 in 4 fled to places like America.
Crazy.
This would be why New York and Boston have big Irish communities that materialize out of nowhere in the late 1840s. The more you know. And real quick before we move on to the 1900s, it's not a coincidence that the areas least affected by the famine were the Protestant parts. And if that wasn't bad enough, Britain was also busy shutting down the last remaining hedge schools that taught Greek and Latin to Catholic kids. Before this, Ireland's Catholicism had produced the longest continuous tradition of Greek and Latin anywhere on Earth. But God forbid kids who aren't Anglican be allowed to learn. Gross. So, what to do from here? Well, if you're the population of Ireland in the early 1900s, the answer was literally anything else, and that echoed in a call for home rule and their own independent government. However, Ulster was still fiercely unionist, and it almost looked like pro-union and pro-home rule paramilitary groups were going to start fighting a battle when World War I suddenly became a much more pressing issue. But on Easter of 1916, Irish insurgents occupied government buildings in Dublin, so the British Army shelled them into surrender and then executed the rebel leaders. This, you may guess, did not sit super great with the Irish public, so as soon as the World War was over, Ireland fought a guerrilla war of independence, and in 1922 it was granted home rule as their own free state under the British Crown. And in the late 30s and 40s, Ireland transitioned into a fully independent republic. Ulster, however, opted to stay in the UK and became known as Northern Ireland. The split between North and South came to a head in the latter part of the century, as Northern Irish Catholics still faced heavy discrimination, and their peaceful protests met violent opposition opposition. And this erupted into the Troubles, 3 decades of insurgency, terrorism, and police brutality in Northern Ireland, as IRA irregulars fought against Ulster Volunteer forces and British police to end British rule in Northern Ireland. After some 3,500 casualties, most of them civilian, the Good Friday Agreement of 1998 mandated that Northern Ireland could vote to unify with the Republic at any time they liked, and that there would never again be a hard border on the island between North and South. Oh, dear God, not again. Whew, criminy, even when Irish history lets up, it doesn't let up. Meanwhile, the Republic of Ireland enacted a series of economic and political reforms to lift the country out of hundreds of years of poverty. And today the people of Ireland are safer, richer, better fed, and freer to express their religion than they've been in centuries. It's distressing to see Ireland so cruelly oppressed for so long, but it's inspiring to see the past century's reclamation.
Look at that. That's beautiful. Where is this place? I'd definitely like to check out that castle. Wow.
Of Irish culture and their long-deserved independence. In Ireland, history is never far away. The legacy of their centuries-long golden age is everywhere from the Celtic cross to the Irish language, and the painful memory of the Great Famine has motivated Ireland to become a world's leader in international food aid, and I will gladly raise a pint to that.
Absolutely.
In ancient Ireland, monks had to copy entire manuscripts by hand, but now it's never been easier to get instant access to a world of literature thanks to today's sponsor, Audible. With enough audiobooks to fill a scriptoria, Audible is the #1 source for all your literary listening needs. Whether you're walking around town, sitting on a bus, or just making some dinner, it's great to sit.
Wow. I'd say that was definitely a quick summarization of the history. You know, it touched on pieces that I already kind of picked up, but it definitely added a little bit to it. Man, I think the one thing that I pick up more than anything is that there hasn't been a lot of peace until recently. Like Ireland had a very long history of strife on the island. You know, I'm interested to know the amount of people in both the Republic and Northern Ireland that want to have a reunification of the entire island, or would prefer to the North stay part of the UK and the Republic stay separate. I wonder. And so is there anything going on now? Is everything like peaceful? I did hear that Ireland has a extremely good economy right now. So like, I think is it the best in Europe or like the third? I don't remember. I got to look that up. But altogether, guys, I mean, I learned a little bit new on here, I think, but not really, you know, like just some basic stuff like where the name comes from. And, you know, most of this was kind of stuff I kind of picked up to a certain extent. It was just explained a little bit better, which is good. You know, I need to continue refreshing these things I'm learning because, you know, as everybody knows, you know, as a kid, you get taught things. You're like a sponge. You absorb everything and you just don't forget it. But, you know, as you become an adult and you get older and older and older, the older you get, it seems like you can learn, but you need to kind of rehash things a little bit more and kind of go a little more in depth a few more times to make sure you pick it up, especially when you're trying to learn new things every single day like I am. But I would love to learn some of the Irish mythology, you know, and it's interesting how I don't really know exactly what he's talking about here. I'd like to find out more about this, but how, you know, you had your Celtic spiritual traditions, I guess your Celtic pagan traditions, and then you had Christianity come in, and what was it, like the 3rd century, 4th century? I don't remember exactly. It was somewhere around 3rd, 4th century. And then kind of the Christianity and the Celtic traditions got merged together in some ways, created these beautiful Bibles. Where were they? I don't even know where they were. Some beautiful stonework on some of these. Look at that. Like, I mean, wow. It's interesting. I'd like to look at the different parts and see how has Celtic tradition and Christianity merged to create something that is a little bit different from both, if you get what I'm saying. I don't know if any of these things I'm talking about here, some things I'm just kind of talking out loud and kind of questioning to myself, but other things I'm hoping people in the comments can kind of guide me to, something a video that may help me figure some of this stuff out, because it's also new to me and I really don't even know where to look for part of this, but I'll get there. Anyways, guys, this was an interesting video. Like I said, it taught me a few new things, but for the most part, just rehashed some things that I needed to rehash. But hopefully I'll check out the Troubles and more about the potato famine and many other things in the near future about Ireland. Anyways, guys, please click that like button. Feel free to share your comments and suggestions about this video or other things that you think I would enjoy checking out. And also, please don't forget to subscribe to continue to join me on my journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Till next time, guys. Peace.